In part 6 of this video, we're going to prepare our financial statements in good form. Remember that your financial statements must be prepared in a certain order. The first financial statement is the income statement. The second statement is the statement of retained earnings, and the third statement is the balance sheet. In part 6, we're going to calculate the financial statement for the income statement. In order to do that, you're going to go to the income statement column of your worksheet, and you're going to pick up your revenues and expenses. But recall that when we're doing an income statement in a multi-step format, we need to make sure that we follow the format. So we're going to take our revenues and our expenses, and now we're going to calculate or prepare our income statement. When you do your income statement, make sure you have your title. Your title includes the name of your company, the name of the statement, and for the year ending. Remember, an income statement in a multi-step format has different pieces. You start with your revenues, you then do your operating expenses, then you do your other revenues and expenses, and then you do your income taxes. So we're going to start with our revenues. Our revenue is the $139,978. All we're doing is we're picking up the revenue from the income statement column called revenue. Our operating expenses are our salary expense, our rent expense, our utilities expense, our office supplies expense, and our depreciation expense. Those are our operating expenses. So here, our operating expenses, we're going to put in our salary expense, rent expense, utility expense, depreciation expense, office supplies expense, and we're just picking those numbers directly off of the worksheet, the income statement column. The total operating expense is the subtotal. All you're doing there is you're adding up all of the operating expenses to get a subtotal. You then have something called income from operations. Your income from operations is your revenue minus your operating expenses. So in this case, my total revenue is $139,978. When I add up all of my operating expenses, I get $111,982. I subtract the 2, and I have a subtotal called income from operations. Again, income from operations is simply my revenues minus my operating expenses. Then I have my other revenues and expenses. That's either interest expense or interest revenue. In this case, I have interest expense. So I'm just simply picking up the interest expense, the $3,086 from the column here, and I'm plugging that in here. Then I have another subtotal called income before taxes. To get this number, I'm simply taking my income from operations, I'm subtracting my interest expense, and that gives me my subtotal, income from operations. I then subtract out my income tax expense. So again, I'm going to go over here and find my income tax expense. That's the $6,998. I plug that in here, and my net income, I'm going to take my income from taxes, before taxes, subtract my income tax expense, and that gives me my net income. Note, my net income should tie to the income balance that I have on my worksheet. That is a good check figure. If you get a different number, recheck your calculations. So again, to review, when you do your income statement, make sure you have the following components: revenues, operating expenses, your income from operations. Again, that's your revenues minus your expenses. Then you're going to have other revenues and expenses. That's where your interest expense comes in. You subtract that. That gives you another subtotal, income before taxes. Then you subtract out your income tax expense, and then that gives you your net income.